Welcome to the Hen House Podcast, where mothers rise together in authentic conversation and sacred connection. With your hosts, Chantal Breanne and Andrea Sjöberg. It's time to jump into the Hen House.
I have been thinking a lot lately about connection and the different types of connection. And I think this is what I have come to the realization of is I think it's really easy kind of generally and in the place where I've been and where a lot of the people I know have been to think about connecting to ourselves, like really deeply connecting to ourselves, mind, body. It's the essence of chiropractic. And it's this deep connection to ourselves, our connection to higher power, to God, to source, our connection to others, to those we love, to those we interact with every day. These are really easy connections to really keep in mind. And I think what tends to get forgotten is our connection to nature and to the essence of the earth and how important how correlated the health of our earth and the health of our bodies and our minds is. We are so interconnected, and I think that's been something that's been forgotten. And I think there's this reawakening that's happened in the last couple of years, and you may have noticed it too, right? I mean, I've never seen so many people whose goal it is to basically move to the country. Enough of moving to cities. People are leaving the cities. And I, in fact, in the last year moved to a smaller city, though still in the city, however, a little bit smaller. And I fall in amongst that category of saying, you know what, I would like to have a home that has some land with it because, well, I personally have really never done it. I really haven't. My mom was not the biggest gardener. Now, I grew up in a country property just outside of Steinbach, Manitoba. We had 5 acres and we lived there till I was 9. And then we moved to town, which we also had a little bit of property, but we had a pool, so it was a lot more concrete in our yard. However, still tons of trees, tons of nature around, tons of cycling, outdoor time, stuff like that. And then I found when I moved and lived in Atlanta, you had to work so much harder to get outside, out and about, and to find your hiking trails and fight traffic to get there and stuff like that. And so I'm excited where I'm at now because it's definitely a lot easier to get to parks and things like that. However, what's really been on my mind and my heart a lot is the use of pesticides and herbicides and glyphosate and Roundup, which are, one, horrible for us, endocrine disruptors, cancer causing, really poor for our health. And therefore, any of the foods that have come in contact with that or have been grown on land that is not nutrient dense, it harms the nutrient content of our food. And in many cases, even if we're eating vegetables, they might be GMO and they might have glyphosate and other herbicides and pesticides on them, and not all of these chemicals wash off when we wash our fruits and vegetables. Right? So this has been something that's been on my mind a lot. This is kind of how it started for me, is this exposure to chemical, saying, okay, I would like to grow some of my own food. Let's start small. Maybe some herbs, maybe a couple little plants. Let's start small because, guys, I am new at this. This is not something... we planted a lot of flowers when I was a kid. I helped with watering a lot of flowers. We usually had some rhubarb plants, some tomato plants. That was generally about the extent of it. Though I did spend many hours pulling rocks out of a garden when I don't know how old I would have been, maybe 5 or 6. And we got paid per giant bucket of rocks that we pulled out of the garden. But I have this desire to say, you know what, there's something to being more self-sustainable. There's something to saying, if the grocery store closes down, I still have some food. I still have access to food. And this was the beginning for me of going, there's chemicals in the foods that we're getting from the store. We don't know the soil quality that it's grown in. I have concerns over health because ultimately I always want the best health possible. And having a daughter now and being pregnant really made this so much more apparent for us as a family, of going, wow, we really need to pay attention to the nutrients and the nutrient density of the foods that we're getting and putting into my body, our daughter's body, and stuff like that. And then with that as well, it's going, okay, it makes sense to have some capacity to be self-sustaining, to have some ability to grow your own food. And this was the progression. And as I get deeper and deeper into this, and kind of coming back to where I started, of thinking about connection, and I'm going, wow, what we've been missing, what I've been missing, and I believe as a society, what we've been missing is this deep connection to our earth and paying attention to her health as well, and recognizing that we have infinite ability to heal, and our earth has infinite ability to heal, and we need to take the right steps, we need to take the right actions to move in that direction for all of us. And so this is kind of what started this contemplation for me. And I think that there is such power to connecting to the earth. And I don't think you have to live on 60 acres of land in order to connect either. I think that there's a lot of ways you can start small. I think that I live in the city. We do have a yard, however it floods. There's a road in front of us and behind us, which is not ideal. However, it was hard to find a house at the time that we moved. So we get runoff from the road. Both the neighbors on both sides of us, which are relatively close. It's not like we live there's not giant gaps between houses. So the runoff all comes into our yard floods. We couldn't plant a garden in our yard currently because it floods. And we have concerns about even planting pots of herbs and stuff like that because of pesticides through the wind and stuff like that. We haven't figured out yet how much transfers into all of that. But if I figure it out, I'll let you all know. And we have a new baby, which keeps us pretty darn busy most of the time. So anyway, there's been this contemplation, and we've really been thinking a lot about what is our next move and how can that look, and how can we become a little bit more self-sufficient? How can we learn to compost? How can we learn to improve the soil quality of wherever we live? And how can we begin to really take an active part in growing what nourishes us? And how can we, in that process, have such a deep physical and spiritual healing by reconnecting to the earth? And I think that's the part that's been missing, and we get to start wherever we're at. And, so even just putting our feet in the grass and pausing to watch the grass blow, but really beginning to deeply interact with nature again. And even in how we raise our children, it's something I really love. So we have clover in our backyard that grows, and Simeon will take our daughter out and hold her above the clover so that she can watch the bees as they get the nectar out of the clover and buzz around, and just observing nature, getting to interact with nature, because we are nature. And I watched a documentary which was super interesting, and it was called Kiss the Ground. And I think there's actually a new one coming out called Common Ground. I don't know when it comes out though exactly. But really talking about this idea of regenerative farming, regenerating the earth and bringing life back, bringing microorganisms back. And someone had said that as humans, we are really more microorganisms than we are almost anything else. So we're made up of more bacteria. We have more bacteria elements in us than quote unquote human elements. And so I think there's this interaction that brings a lot of health and a lot of healing in really finding our own ways to connect to the earth, to get our hands into the soil, to really honor the earthworms that help keep the soil healthy, and to really move into a space where we don't rely on chemicals because they're so bad for us. They're so bad for us. And where, I would love to get to a place as a society where we can go to parks and know that there's not Roundup sprayed everywhere in the park. And that would be amazing. And I don't think we're there yet. And I crave to have this safe space in nature that I know is relatively untouched by chemicals, and where we really get to live in communion with nature, where we really get to live at peace with nature, where we get to observe and we get to interact and we get to offer our own care and consideration to our Mother Earth by caring for the soil, by being willing to interact in more conscious ways with the planet around us. And I think in return, we get this amazing healing that comes back to us, and of nutrient-dense foods, of the deep grounding of putting your toes in the grass or in the sand or in the water, and of moving into a place where we all have greater health, because our health is very linked to the health of our planet. And I think if we can really tap into that connection, and as we're connecting, not forget about the power that resides in nature, I think that is something really worth considering, and even just practicing. We practice connecting to ourselves, and that's really the place to start. And it's talked about so much, right? And once we've done that, I think that we just can't forget that our connection to nature is also integral to us. And so even just to sit in nature and really pause and really appreciate and begin to interact and begin to show respect to the creatures large and small around us, because even earthworms have such a purpose. Earthworms contribute to our health, right? And so, because they contribute to soil health. And this, I think, from a very practical, logical perspective, is something to really consider. But I think also from a spiritual perspective, of really considering that we are all created, that we all coexist here, and to find a peaceful way of doing that, and a way to say, to find a type of interaction and a way of interacting that works for us and is also respectful of the nature around us, and to begin to move in that direction. However large or small that movement is, I think that that's really, really powerful. And because we are created, every day our cells and our being is nourished and created by that which comes out of the soil, out of the land, from the animals who eat things on the land, and to really begin to pay attention to that. And I think, on a very practical note as well, there are a lot of issues with current agriculture. And I think it also makes sense to move in a more conscious direction of saying, I need to pay attention to the quality of what I'm putting in my body. I need to pay attention to where I'm buying my groceries and where they sourced things from. Maybe I need to pay attention to the connections for the people around me and find a way to locally find someone who raises animals and crops in a very conscious, integrity-based kind of way. And only you know what's right for you. And this has been a deep thought of mine lately, and where I feel very called, and we will see in the next few years as I get more and more down this gardening path. We will see how it goes, and I'll keep you posted, because it is going to be a learning curve. And there are some great people also who have done the path before who are great resources. And I feel this real call, this deep inside call to return to the earth, and not in the ashes to ashes, dust to dust way. I'm not there yet. Sorry, dark humor. But I really feel this call just to return to this connection to the earth, to return to that childlike innocence that sees a hill with grass on it and goes rolling all the way down it, where to see a sunset is magic every time, appreciation, to see beautiful soil and the beautiful plants, the raspberries, let's say, that grow out of it. Like, I've been looking at raspberries lately, trying to see things through my daughter's eyes, and I go, wow, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. And no, I'm not high. But I think there's something to really pausing to appreciate and find the beauty in it, and the reverence of this gorgeous planet that we live on, and to give back and to connect and to remember that in nature our brain waves change. In nature we find nearly everything that we require to survive and to thrive, and to really remember that we are a part of everything else, and we are all connected, and our health and the health of our earth is intricately connected, and therefore it behooves all of us to move in a direction of greater health, of greater respect for our earth, and greater connection. And I think in greater connection to the earth, we will find a lot of not only physical rewards, I think we'll find greater mental health as a society, and I think that we'll find greater spiritual health, because our Creator created all of it. And we are beautifully interconnected, and beautifully aligned when we choose to be. And it's going to take a little bit of work, because let's say as a society we've gotten far off kilter, and I am as guilty as anyone else as far as that goes. Like there's room for all of us to grow, and that's okay. And it's where we are and where we move. And I think it begins with recognizing that the earth is important and our connection to the earth is important. And even if you want to connect to the earth through meditation or something like that, you can do it without even leaving your house. And that might be the place to start. Or maybe the place to start is pausing and just really admiring something when you're in nature, or experiencing something through the eyes of a child. Or maybe it is planting a small pot of herbs on your balcony or in your yard or wherever. Or maybe it's stopping using Roundup on your property, or starting to buy organic, or finding a local farmer's market. It could look a lot of different ways. And this is something I am just really becoming passionate about. And part of me is a little surprised. But anyways, happy connecting to Earth. And thank you for listening. And thank you for joining us in season 1 of Into the Hen House.